This is one of the biggest scandals in the country, and you might never have heard of it. It starts with 10-year-old Millie Main, who was treated for leukemia at Queen Elizabeth University Hospital in Glasgow. She had a stem cell transplant that at first appeared to be successful, but she later contracted sepsis and died. Nobody in the hospital told her at the time, but when Millie's mum Kimberly looked at her daughter's death certificate, she saw something unusual. One of the possible causes of the death was an infection caused by bacteria usually found in contaminated water. As you can imagine, Kimberly was dealing with the tragic loss of her daughter, and she assumed that if anything was wrong, the NHS would have told her about it. But a year later, when she saw the cancer ward her daughter had been treated in was closed, she started to ask questions. Questions the local health board refused to answer. Because having told her nothing for a year, when they were asked about it, they said they couldn't link contaminated water to Millie's death because they hadn't tested the water. But what the hospital didn't tell Kimberly is it had already identified contaminated water in the hospital and that it was a high risk to patients. In fact, there had been warnings about this before the hospital even opened in 2015. And this doesn't stop with the health board, because according to a note seen by the BBC, there was quote-unquote political pressure. Quote, no consideration was given to delaying the opening of the hospital despite the issues being faced with completion and operation. So Scottish Government ministers knew about the infected water before the hospital opened and for years after. At no point did anyone do anything about it. Then, when 10-year-old Millie and other children tragically died, the instinct was not to own up and fix it, but to cover the whole thing up. It was only when Kimberly contacted her local MSP, a guy called Anas Sarwar, that the lies started to unravel. For years, Anas and the families have fought for the truth. And it wasn't just one family. 84 children who were being treated for cancer ended up with a serious infection. But it was only in 2021 that the Scottish Government accepted an inquiry into this whole scandal. And only last month, 9 years after Millie's death, that the NHS admitted that it was more likely than not that the infections were connected to the contaminated water supply. Even now, they're treating bereaved parents with contempt and to rub salt into the wound at the same time as the health board was lying, covering up and misleading grieving parents. The health board saw fit to award the chief executive of the hospital with an Excellence in Leadership award. The whole thing is a total disgrace and it shames everybody involved. We have got to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again, and that starts with full transparency, something the Scottish Government are refusing to provide even to this day. In just a few weeks' time, we've got an election in Scotland, and the choice for First Minister is Anas Sarwar, the man who has fought with these families for years to get the truth, or John Swinney, who has sat in the Scottish Cabinet for 20 years while this whole thing was covered up.